Acts chapter 7, verse 2. Stephen declared, "Brothers and fathers, listen. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran. He said to him, 'Leave your country and your relatives and come here to the land that I will show you.' Then he left the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran. From there, after his father died, God moved him to this land where you now live. He gave him no inheritance in it, not even a foothold, yet he promised to give it to him as a possession, to him and to his descendants after him, even though he had no child." For Abraham, it was a good start. The hardest part is often that first step of obedience. When Abraham still lived in Mesopotamia, it says before he went to Haran, before he settled in Haran, is when God spoke to him. And so he and his family, they got up and began the journey from Mesopotamia, which is present-day Iraq, on their way to the land God would show them, which we know is about 800 miles away in the land of Israel. But they stopped in Haran. They stopped about 500 miles short. Now, when you first start, when you first leave, that's when it's easiest to turn around. When you first step out in obedience to what God has told you to do, it's in those first few miles that you can still see home, that you can still see what's familiar. You can still see what's comfortable and go, maybe I want to turn around. But they didn't turn around. They pressed on. They kept going. And they got out of sight. And perhaps you can have the feeling like, look, we've really gone a long way. We've really made good progress. We've gone 500 miles, but you're not yet in the place God said to stop. They settled in Haran. They stopped short. Now, we recognize it was probably because of his father, Terah. It was probably because of what he wanted that they stopped, but still they stopped short. And it wasn't until after Terah died that they got up and they kept going. In Genesis 11, verse 32 or 31, we read, "Terah took Avram his son and Lot, Haran's son, his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Avram's wife. And he took them out of Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah's days were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran." They settled in Haran. They stopped short. They stopped short of fulfilling the fullness of what God had for them. We're often satisfied with good beginnings, but God is more interested in finishing what was started. He wants us to finish what he called us to do. Again, I don't know why they stopped, but that can happen to any of us. We can find ourselves satisfied with a good start or with what ends up being the appearance of full obedience. Stopping with less than total obedience and saying, hey, this is good enough. We had a conversation, we talked it over, and we meant well, but it was exhausting. And so I think we're going to settle here. Haran seemed fine. Haran seemed good enough. Perhaps you've stepped out in obedience to the Lord. You stepped out in obedience to something that he's told you to do. And he said, I'm calling you to make a change. I'm calling you to go here, to do this. I'm calling you to head in a new direction. And yet you find yourself tired. You find yourself perhaps with people that aren't ready to go all the way in obedience to God. And the thing that's stopping you is others around you who are like, Haran is good enough. Haran is fine. No, don't stop short of what God has called you to do. Don't go halfway. Today, as we live our lives to please him, as we say, I want to make you smile, say, I want to take that next step today, every step today, to get to where you're calling me to be. I'm not going to stop short. Amen? Let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be pleasing to him. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts make him smile today.